Good
afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to Food Processing Skills Canada's Speaking Food webinar series. My name is Tracy Bernacchi-Duza, and I am the Senior Project Manager at Food Processing Skills Canada. If you can please have your phone ready to allow you to scan a QR code that David's going to share with us at the beginning of his presentation. You'll find out what that means, and I just wanted to give you a little heads up for that. I'd like to introduce our presenter today. David Amar is a seasoned business operations leader and cybersecurity strategist with a diverse background in the food and beverage industry and IT managed services. With over 5 years of focused cybersecurity experience, David has helped organizations strengthen digital defenses and adapt to an evolving landscape of threats and concerns. As Senior Manager of Business Operations, David brings a rare blend of technical fluency and business acumen. He has led cross-functional initiatives involving ERP, CRM, and ITSM systems, managed high-impact project portfolios, and driven strategic client engagements, all while emphasizing cybersecurity readiness. David's expertise lies in bridging operational efficiency with proactive security. His work empowers businesses to optimize processes and foster a culture of resilience and cyber awareness. A passionate advocate for forward-thinking security practices, David is committed to helping organizations mitigate risk, safeguard critical assets, and thrive in a connected world. Please welcome David Amar.
Thank you, Tracy, for the very nice introduction. So as Tracy mentioned, thank you and welcome for joining us today. Today we're going to be looking at defending the future of food and beverage from hackers. So the 101 of cyber attacks. So the ultimate goal today will be to show you what's out there, what are the risks, and to show you how you could build some strategies to mitigate with. That will be the takeaway for today. So before we begin, let's start off with a scenario of sorts and paint a picture. So it's 6 a.m. You're at the processing factory. You've got your machinery going. There's a smell of citrus in the air. It smells nice. Orders are going through. Everything is going on as expected, and all of a sudden, everything goes dark. Your systems also go dark. There's no inventory tracking available. You have a chilling message that appears, and it starts telling you to pay up or you lose everything. So this particular situation is not foreign. It's not alien. It's something that happens to small and medium-sized businesses in your industry and also large enterprise actively today in 2025. So today we're really going to be looking at how do we make sure this doesn't happen to you, and what strategies you could take to avoid this. So we went through my introduction already. I work for Armor Cybersecurity. I'm a senior manager over there. The idea here is really to bridge, mitigate risks, your business risks, and your critical assets. And in this particular case, your secret sauce, your formula. How do we protect your crown jewels, your orders, your financial systems? What are the steps and processes to get through to protect, to making sure that you're secure at all times, moving forward? So where do I come from? Armor Cybersecurity. Quick introduction about this. We're a company based out of Toronto. I myself am from Montreal. We're based in Toronto. We're a one-stop shop for every type of cybersecurity needs. We come in with a lot of experience from the Big Four and the military as well in cyber defense. We have clients worldwide, about 220 of them so far, and counting. We deal with small to medium size and enterprise alike. Everybody has the right to have cybersecurity down the line. It's important, especially today in 2025. We have more than 15 industries that we work with, and we have the ability to speak in multiple languages throughout the team. Here's a little snapshot of who we've worked with. There's plenty more. And a few of those are part of the food and beverage industry as well. We've provided proper help to these guys as well. So enough of that. Here is the QR code Tracy was mentioning. Please take a moment to grab your phones. We'll also send you a link in an email afterwards. What we're going to be doing with this, and I promise it's not a quishing exercise. You could Google that if you need. So what this is, our cybersecurity engineers in the background, if you scan this and enter some information, we'll be able to show you what the hackers see. We'll be able to show you what are the elements that you're leaving, you're exposed in today. So cloud workloads, SaaS apps, forgotten subdomains, leaked credentials, all kinds of stuff. Once we send you the report, within 3 4 days or so, we'll have a short call to explain what this all means. So more for later. And again, there's going to be a link afterwards that will be sent your way. So today, what are we going to be looking at? The cybercrime landscape in 2025, the challenges in the food and beverage industry, and the resilience strategies. Slight slide about us, about how we can help, and a Q&A. So the landscape, let's get right in. So four main things. There's an increase inside the cyber attack frequency. Everybody's got a computer, everybody's got a phone, everybody has access to the internet. We're talking about globally the cost at 10.5 trillion annually in 2025. That's a lot of money. And where it's coming from as the economy, we all know the economy is not doing super hot these days. And when people don't find a job, have a hard time, making ends meet. A lot of people, unfortunately, tend to crime, and in 2025, that's cybercrime. You do a bit of research, it'll be very easy to figure out how to go about attacking someone with simple software or advanced software in certain cases. Ransomware attacks are going up. So they've increased by 171% from 2019 to 2020 and only rising. And back then we were talking about $115,000 to $312,000 in terms of a ransomware payment. Now we'll see this more in large industries, but SMBs can be targeted too. And remember, even if you're small, if you have 5, 10, 15 people and you're not a dole, let's say, in the food and beverage processing, you're still a target because these guys, just like you, are after a volumes game. So yes, there's more coverage on the enterprise side with these big firms that have thousands of employees. CBC, CTV will take that up and show it on the media, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen to smaller businesses. So the ransom could vary. It could be lower to make it more attractive to simply pay it, and it could be higher if they want a massive payout and they know you can pay it. Data breaches are they have gone up as well. 4.45 million is an average number. However, no, a data breach could cost that amount from the ransom, from the actual restoration, from your legal costs and so on. The number could climb up very quickly if we don't have the right systems in place to protect ourselves. And very important for the SMB space, as 75% of targets begin with an email. So phishing attacks are quite real. All it takes is one click from one of your employees, and it's the hacker will gain some more advantages over your systems. So we'll get into more details into all of these. Moving on for now. We're going to also get into details into every single one of these types of breaches and what you could do against them or protect yourself. Over here you have so intellectual property theft. Anything in bold that you see are important ones for the food and beverage industry. They're all important. They're all a risk. But intellectual property, if you don't have your formula, if it's into the wrong hands, your competitive advantage might be lost. So those, technically speaking, would be your crown jewels. The way you process the food as well is also as important. Supply chain. It would be false to think that only protecting yourself is the key to making sure you're safe. There's also making sure that your suppliers, your vendors, your buyers, anybody you interact with has been vetted to a certain degree. Insider threats and ransomware we'll deal with in a bit. In your case, operational technology does have an important impact. You guys have potentially wireless freezers. You have machines that process beverages, that mulch product, so on and so forth. If they're connected to the internet, that's a route for vulnerability. Phishing and social engineering we spoke of, but we've all received a text message that was suspicious. I hope you haven't clicked on it, but if you have, it could lead to some further problems and leaves you vulnerable. Cloud, we're all moving to cloud today. Everybody is moving away from on-site systems. If those are not set up properly, it's also a risk. And for you in the food and beverage industry, regulatory compliance is to be taken into consideration as well. If you want to deal with larger suppliers down the line or larger buyers, um, they will require that you conform to their contracts, but also there's regulations out there that need for you to comply. If not, there's issues that could come down the line as well. So in advance, this is the ones that people have been planning and plotting for a long time. For SMB spaces, this exists, but we'll spend less time on that one. Moving on. So who's at fault? Who does this? Um, so I put a little star next to the most important pieces of the puzzle of who is actually trying to hack you to create harm to your business. So there's the individual. So you have the insider threat, or you have a double employee of sorts, somebody working for somewhere else trying to get sensitive information and bring it back to their initial employer. We never know. But controls need to be placed around the individual to make sure that threats are not don't materialize themselves. Organized crime. So we have the individual, but we also have the people who want to make some money. So back to the economy and how people turn to crime when things are not going so well. So over here, it's usually in sets of groups. So it could be an individual criminal, but the motivation is going to be financial. Um, these three are less impacted, but I want to highlight the nation state actors. An example here would be if you work with the military, you're providing food, you're processing, you're delivering food to a military operation. You have a country that wants harm onto Canada, for instance. If they get into your systems and adjust your dosages, and if one of your ingredients could potentially be harmful or lethal in any way, shape, or form, we could have a problem there. So to be considered as well, but in the SMB space, it's less of an issue. Again, we focus on these two first. Hacktivist, it's usually for political gain or ideology. Again, not as relevant, but still important to know. And cyber terrorism, well, we're talking more, do we want to take down a power grid? But again, I'll point the individual and organized crime specifically for the SMB space in your industry. Moving on. Real world examples. There's quite a few. So you'll see big names, big companies, and you can find them, you can see all the information about them online if you take a quick Google search. So Dole, we've all seen their stickers on bananas. They suffered a massive ransomware attack, and that caused shortages on some products. Cisco, a massive data breach. We're talking about all kinds of employee information that's out and about in the wild, and this went undetected for months. Mondelez, the folks behind Oreo, a data breach with their law firm. So big organization, they have an internal law firm of their own. So that's a lot of sensitive information, potentially M&A, mergers and acquisition information that was potentially compromised. Maple Leaf Foods, it was a comprehensive attack. They had to shift over all their operations from digital to manual. Can you guys imagine doing that today? I know I would have a hard time. I'm told JBS, some of you deal with also a very public, very loud on the internet. They suffered a ransomware attack. It was from a group out of Russia, the FBI found, called Revel. It was $11 million in ransom that was actually paid via Bitcoin to regain access to all their data. So their North American and Australian operations were down completely. And these are big employee counts and high profile amounts. But let's not hide away from the fact that small businesses, it's happening to them as well. And what happens here is it impacts less people and the media will give it less attention. Therefore, you'll find less cases online. But the SMBs hackers know they're an easy target. There's usually a lack of security put in place and leaves most SMBs from the food and beverage processing to all kinds of different industries leaves you all vulnerable. Um, so moving on. So back to that example of 6 a.m. It's citrus in the air. There's ingredients flying around. It smells super nice. Everything's working, and then everything stops. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's preparation, just like you prepare the food to get it on the shelves. Hackers, if they're determined, they'll prepare what they need to do to get into your systems. So day zero, and you'll see it goes 2 weeks plus. So an initial email gets sent. One of your employees clicks. Um, the hacker installs some malware or some software that could scan your keystrokes, and all of a sudden gets access to your user's password, your credentials to go in. Now, once there are credentials, well, there's different techniques and systems to be used to expand the privileges of the credentials into an admin account, meaning that the hacker now has the keys to the castle, the keys to your crown jewels, which could be a variety of things depending on the business. At this stage, day five, now in the background, the hacker will typically start copying information over to an external server to back themselves up. And then day seven, that's when you saw the screen with the little video flash by. The ransom note is delivered. If they will ask for an encryption key, or your systems will be encrypted, meaning that you won't be able to see any data. It cannot be accessed. You'll need a password. And so your entire business is at a halt. And then day eight, well, this is when the threats begin to leak your data publicly, and this could lead to reputational damage and legal obligations down the line. Um, Week two, well, now we're talking about remediation. Maybe you've paid the ransom, it was likely expensive. You have to respond to the incident, you have to recover. There's a whole forensic investigation that needs to take place to make sure that you're back on track and to do business again. So consequences, your business is down for a while, several amounts of dollars in terms of financial loss. You have potentially exposed data, including personally identifiable information and confidential client files that shouldn't be out there. And then your reputation takes a massive hit. Lessons learned, they're also on the side of under lessons learned, but you need multi-factor authentication to make sure it's two areas of entry to be able to authenticate yourself to use any type of system. So absolutely everywhere, and especially for administrative accounts, you need a security system. So specifically endpoint detection and response, very important to have in 2025. You need some regular incident response drills. Who today in the group knows what to do in the case of a security event such as this? So it's important to practice that, just like fire drills back in elementary school and high school. The same should go down in your business as well. Um, so backups, very important. If you have, there's cloud backups available today, but a way around this ransomware note is if you have a backup on the side that hasn't been touched and that's not accessible because it's under literally lock and key, and you perform these backups monthly, well, you could get back online. And security awareness training, super important for anybody who's, I got a Q&A. Yeah, I'll get through the questions and I'll answer afterwards. So yeah, we'll get into all the details in a bit. So moving on, AI, it's another buzzword. But it's very real. How does AI change the cybersecurity landscape? So essentially, today we're looking at threat detection and prevention. So automated response and fraud identity protection. So today, AI, it's embedded into protection systems. So what it could do is analyze patterns. It could see if there's any information trying to be leaked out of your environment, and it could automatically remediate if need be through machine learning. So this is real nice. But on the flip side, there's the good and then there's the bad. If we have access as cybersecurity experts to AI technologies, well, the hackers have access to that too, which causes, there's security challenges also of inputting private information to AI system. Is it safe? And then there's AI-driven attacks. So it speeds up the process to hack a lot of smaller companies way faster and spread out the attack. And there's deep fakes. So say you get on a call with somebody that needs money from you or wants money from you. Take a look at this.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality?
You get the gist. So essentially, at this point, anybody could pretend to be anyone at any point. As long as there's some social engineering in the background to know how to go about it, you could get spoofed into paying something that you shouldn't be. So vigilance is very important today.
I am not more.
So the food and beverage industry challenges, we'll go over it. Um, so there's a few things to consider here. We're SMBs in this space and who we're speaking to today. So you might have limited in-house IT. You might not have dedicated cybersecurity staff. You have internal teams that work with multiple hats, do a lot of things all at the same time. We all understand that in all SMBs, it's the same idea. You might have outdated legacy technology. Maybe you're using older machines. Maybe they're not being patched or not supported anymore. There's a high risk of phishing and email-based attacks. So same for financial scams and fraud. Anybody that gains access to your systems could impersonate a CEO asking for a fake payment to be sent to by wire to somebody else. These are real events and they happen to businesses of all shapes and sizes. And again, small businesses are viewed as easy targets. So important to have the right measures in place. Ransomware threats, this could go up to halting your entire production. It could spoil inventory if somebody gets a hold of locking your air conditioning system in your fridge if it's Wi-Fi connected. The cost of downtime. So you need to consider, like we mentioned before, data recovery, the potential ransom, and all of that could be quite crippling. Third-party supply chain, we mentioned it previously, but they are also a door to breaches if you don't vet them properly. If you don't have an incident response plan, very important and critical to make sure that you have something in place. You do your drills to make sure you could when the event does happen, you're not panicking and there are no delays that lead to greater losses. Compliance, there's a few. There's the FDA, the Food Inspection Agency of Canada. There's the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, so the AFC. There's Safe Food and Canadians regulations. If any of these, if you do business with them or they're a regulator of yours, it's important to look into them to make sure that you're doing all your due diligence with regards to these agencies and these regulators in terms of security and obviously the other elements as well. There's also GDPR and CAN spam. In a nutshell, can you send emails to anybody? And GDPR, how are you protecting personally identifiable information? Very important aspects today. Information is now a commodity. Governments now want you to protect it. In Quebec, we have what's called a Law 25 for those who are in Montreal. It's very similar to GDPR. It could go up to $20 million in terms of compensation and penalties if you're found to be in breach. It's a lot about self-regulation, but you have to show proof that you have policies in place and you are deploying them. Moving on. So data loss and business continuity concerns. Do you have a reliable backup today? Ask yourself the question. And if that backup system is on the cloud, do you have a backup to the backup? It may sound silly, but this is all things to consider and elements that you need to think about when building your strategy. Cyber awareness. can your employees recognize when to click or when not to click an email? Do they know if it's going to be a potentially a scam? Um, and there are ways to figure this out. It's not always obvious, but with the right know-how, there is ways to make sure that your staff is well aware. And look, there's going to be people on the floor processing the food itself. But if we talk about the people in finance, people in marketing, people in sales, the moment they touch a computer, that's when you want them to be aware. Um, and again, I'll harp on this. You are never too small to be a target. There's the whole notion of spray and pray. You send something out via email. Whoever clicks on it, small or big, well, it's an advantage for them. Let's give you the example of you could either have one big account and sell them a huge amount of product, and you as in food and beverage, you'll get a lot of money in one go. But alternatively, you could sell a small $5 bottle of sauce to multiple grocery stores, and you'll be able to make $5 will turn into $1 million. The same ideology could go for SMBs, right? So the idea here is to show you how to get out of these types of situations, how to make sure that you have a strategy in place to avoid being a target. Now, there's no silver bullet answer. What we're in the business of doing is mitigating risk. And what your primary goal should be as a business owner or as an executive of sorts within your business is to make sure there is a strategy in place to mitigate as much risk as possible. What cybersecurity, what these tools and processes that end up doing, or the goal is to make you as the least attractive possible to potential hackers. So for that, you need to put in people, process, technology, and make sure your vendor ecosystem is properly in place. There are trainings available. There are processes and playbooks available, governance frameworks that you could follow. And obviously, technology, very important. If hackers have technology on their end helping them, you should have a foundation, and it does not have to be expensive. For small groups, licenses are typically not expensive if you're with the right partner. Um, and finally, the whole idea here is to make sure that we're mitigating risk and seeing what your risk tolerance is. Are we, if a certain breach comes up and the risk value of that particular breach is of a smaller amount, maybe you're tolerant to that risk. But if the risk is too high and it'll be too expensive in terms of reputational damage and so on, and finances, of course, maybe it's something worth looking at beforehand. So risk mitigation via people, process, technology, and vendor, absolutely important. This is what's going to get you to having a resilient strategy in place. Moving on. So now we're going to get into the details of each of them. This one particularly, IP theft. You have a formula, you have a recipe, you have a standard operating procedure to deliver on your the food that you're processing or the beverages that you're processing in the background. That's intellectual property. It must be protected. It could come from competitors, insiders. If they're gone, well, will you be able to work tomorrow without that information? Do you lose your competitive advantage? For the recommendation in this case is to implement strict access control. Not everybody has to have admin rights. Not everybody has to see every single folder or file available. We want to make sure to continuously monitor your systems, making sure data, if it leaves via USB, somebody can plug it in. They won't be able to because that feature is blocked on your computers, and you'll get a notification. We want to make sure that computers, if you have some in your ecosystem, that if they leave a certain geographic area, well, the right person is notified. Supply chain vulnerabilities. I like olive oil. Who doesn't? There's a lot of fake ones out there. Ones made with that are not traceable in any way, shape, or form. And so if you're with the wrong supplier, or if your supplier is at risk, well, that supplier could be selling you or getting sold to them fake olive oil, and then they sell it to you in return, meaning that your ingredients are not really going to be olive oil. It might be some vegetable oil disguised as olive oil, and it might be a blend of sorts. What about sourcing? If for coffee, we look at the proper sourcing of coffee beans to make sure that they're ethically sourced and everything. So if you claim you're ethically sourced, do you know for a fact that all your ingredients that you're using within your production are they ethically sourced as well? So there's safety risks there, data breaches as well. What we want to do is a continuous assessment of your suppliers before they jump on. What is the minimum barrier for them to work with you or for you to work with them? Ask a series of questions and make it a contractual obligation. In order to do business with you, you must do the following security tasks or present us with the following artifacts. It is within your rights and it saves you from very expensive and big headaches down the line. Moving on, ransomware attacks. We spoke about it in quite a bit, but basically your operational technology, if your machines are locked, you cannot work. So we have downtime, financial loss. What we really want to be looking at here is making sure your systems are fully patched. Your networks are protected and reviewed, and someone internally will get the right notifications and be able to do something if your network has been exposed. So we want to reduce exposure, train staff, very important. Insider threats. So this goes back to the IP issue, and that maybe somebody wants information that you have, take away your competitive advantage. Again, role-based access. You want to make sure that the right people have access only to the information that they need. There is a concept called zero trust. Just don't trust anyone. And then if they need access, they need to ask it, ask to have it. There's different systems that could put that in place. And even if you use MS365, so Microsoft or Outlook, if you use Gmail, there are methodologies and policies that you can put in place to restrict access and deter from insider threats. So operational technology. So again, there's the example of your freezer that stops the work, and then all your inventory, your raw materials and finished materials, if they need refrigeration, if it's connected to the internet, gets hacked, you have a problem. The idea is to segment your networks. So if everything falls into the same Wi-Fi network, a hacker could bounce in between those spaces. It's a bit more technical, but the idea is to get with an expert to make sure that your machines are sitting on a place that's completely separate. So the network that you're answering emails to is not the same network that your machines are working on. So nobody could come in and mess up your dosages if you have connected operational technology. And look, if you have legacy machines, older machines, it's important to eventually look into upgrading if they're not being patched or supported anymore. Moving on. Phishing and social engineering. So over here, phishing awareness training and testing your folks. If they use a computer, you can send them a fake phishing email and see who clicks, and then make sure that they have the right training involved. It's absolutely critical. I like to call it the code 12. It's the issue is 12 inches from the screen, which means human error essentially. So the human, making sure that they're aware that your first line of defense against very, very simple hacks. The easiest ones to conduct at that. There are, we spoke about AI, a lot of complexities there. But this is the first route into your environment that you want to be aware of and at least mitigate, make your employees aware of. Cloud, we're all moving to cloud, as mentioned earlier. If your migration to cloud is not done with security in mind, most Azure, AWS, and any cloud provider, if you have a proprietary application that your team developed in order to facilitate your order process, or if you're hosting your ERP system in a cloud, is that cloud completely secure? It does pose a risk if you haven't put any security practices on top of that cloud, and if you're not getting any notifications if somebody with the unauthorized access gets in your connections, your APIs, so the connections between two systems, is that connection secure? Um, so again, data exposure to whoever wants it, IP theft, operational disruptions, so on and so forth. Um, Basically, you need DevSecOps if it's an application that you develop yourself. So development security operations, somebody to review the development that you've done. If it's a system like any other, we're looking at multi-factor authentication that needs to be established. Okay, moving on. Compliance, as mentioned, many sets of regulatory bodies. It's important in your industry, in food and beverage, but specifically for your business, who do you do business with? Who is technically your regulator? Make sure to read through their demands. The legal penalties for breach of contract or breach of regulation are not fun and are completely avoidable. So make sure that your business is in line with the frameworks that are pushed your way. And regular audits, I mean, once a year, once every couple of years, to make sure that your controls are properly put in place. Persistent threats. This is the long haul, less for the SMB space, but just so you know, some people may be playing the long game and planting seeds very early on to eventually launch a larger attack on a business or government for that matter. So we're almost reaching our time here. About us and how we go about it. And I mean, we're tool vendor agnostic. You, as long as you have this in place, the goal here is to make sure you have somebody who's looking at your security on a regular basis. This could be any managed security services provider. But here's what we could do. We work with 4 pillars. First pillar is advisory. Go through a vulnerability scan, rapid risk assessment, a cyber maturity assessment to at least see where you are, what all are your vulnerabilities, and establish the risk value, and give you a roadmap on how to get into that journey to make sure that you're secure down the line. It won't happen overnight, but at least you're taking the steps to get there, and you know what type of risks are available to you. Professional services. So once we find out what's wrong, well, we help deploy what needs to be done to fix the issue at hand. And we could also do penetration testing afterwards and simulate an attack to see are you safe? Do you have how are your security practices working today? Um, so very important. They go hand in hand. After that, if you don't have somebody that's involved in managing your security, um, once you deploy tooling, it must be configured properly. It must be looked at on a regular basis. And if anything comes up, it needs to be addressed, correct? So the idea is to have somebody, and one example we like to give is if I give you a fighter jet, um, I have a fighter jet in my backyard. I want to give it to you as a gift. And for sure, it's a multi-million-dollar piece of machinery. Why would you say no? Uh, that's a very expensive and fancy nation defense tool. So essentially, you have once you have the fighter jet, do you have the ability to better protect your country with it? Most chances are, unless we have some secret fighter pilots on the call today, most chances are that you can't do much with it. So same goes for these cybersecurity tools and services. If you have a tool and you're not really interacting with it regularly, well, yes, you're a bit more protected, but nobody's really administering it the way it's supposed to. And then, of course, incident response. That's our 4th pillar, where have you done exercises before to test your tactics? Do you have a plan in place? Are you ready for a breach? And then if it happens, do you know who to call, who could fix your situation that you have at hand? So these are the essential pillars that, whether from us or from another provider, it's very important to make sure that you have that all available. I'm leaving this here. You could scan it again. We're at the Q&A portion of the conversation. Let me know if there are any questions for me. I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate that. So as David has mentioned, the Q&A session will start now. So the Q&A is still open if you guys would like to submit any questions as we go along here. But David, I do have 3 questions for you in already, and maybe we can get started with some of those. So
Yeah, go for it.
awesome. Thanks, David. So the first question I have here, and all these are anonymous. The first question reads, what are some key cybersecurity measures you would recommend to put in place?
So the absolute first key cybersecurity measure I would put in place is an endpoint detection and response tool. There are a few, but you want to make sure that the logs, the information that's being taken out, could be used and reviewed. There's a few out there. I won't mention certain companies because a lot of them work very well. That would be one of them. The second one, absolutely. If you use a mailbox, get some email security. Absolutely important to make sure that there's at least one layer between you and a spam email. Um, those are the very first, and also, as I spoke about, there's a lot of human-related information going on, human error. Get some cybersecurity awareness training. It's not expensive. It's easy to do, sometimes even fun. But it'll get your staff ready for what's to come at any point.
Thank you so much for that. So then the best way to start is probably to get the awareness on some of the end-to-end interactions between systems to make sure that they're protected, and also look into protections for the email. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in terms of systems to put in place, I would say those three would be essential. In terms of projects that would be worth your time to eventually look into, is to look at what are your vulnerabilities. Let a cybersecurity expert give you jump into your systems and show you and let you determine what needs to be fixed on your end, depending on the risk that your risk aversion, basically.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. And then I have a second question here that reads, how do you recommend that companies secure their customer/personal data?
So for securing your personal data, multi-factor authentication, absolutely. Get a password manager. Um, if you guys or the team is in the habit of having a post-it note stashed underneath your keyboard, we've seen it all. We've done physical assessments, and we're walking through the site, and passwords are absolutely everywhere. Um, that in itself, I mean, the password's the key, right? With a password manager, you never have to remember a password, and make sure, please, when you create your password, it's got to be over 14 characters, a mix of things. And then a password manager just makes it easier to manage. You just copy and paste. You only need to remember one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think on that point, it's not just the post-it notes around the office. A lot of the times I've seen the good old notepad password repository, and the sticky notes in your platform. I think those are really easy ones that people can handle right off the bat, just in terms of protecting personal, at least, data for the company. But if I may add as well, like I think in terms of companies securing their customer and personal data, it kind of touches on some of the compliances that are in place that really help as a guideline for some of those. So I know you mentioned some of the things like GDPR and can spam and EULA. And now that question, I think, in terms of how you want to protect, also depends on how you want to market and who you want to market to, because there's different protection
Mhm.
guidelines and different details for people to kind of like need to get familiar with. So on that front, if you have any suggestions on that, what do you think would be the best way that some of the people might find some awareness or some tips or some assistance with that? Whether it's a free resource or whether it's like some sort of a consultation, who knows? Maybe even the freebie report will do it. But any thoughts from your end on how people can get some good
Right.
access?
Absolutely. So depending on the framework you're looking at, for specifically CAN, spam, GDPR, and in Quebec, Law 25, take a look. This is all PII, so personally identifiable information Protection Act, pretty much. GDPR is for Europe. So if you deal with the information of any citizen within either the province or within Europe and the equivalent for Canada, it's your obligation to report on any type of breach to the right authorities. That's number one. Number two, you have a lot of data, but it's less prescriptive and more so a call for auto governance. You need to establish the right policies in place, and there are resources online like the data, how the data is treated. That needs to be written somewhere. It's an artifact. It's a lot of artifacts that you need to create, essentially. That, and then from there, once you have the artifacts, the documents and policies, you need to actually follow them. So if there is a breach, you would go to the right resource, the regulating authorities, and then they would ask for those artifacts that you're supposed to have as a business. And if you have them and they see that you're in breach of your own policies, well, the problem is going to persist. So the idea is today, data again is a commodity. It's people sell it left and right, and people want to now protect it, and governments as well are recognizing it. So it's very important to have some internal regulation and policies to make sure that you're protecting your clients' data and your employees, for that matter.
I completely agree. And maybe from my side, just as a tip for some of our other smaller businesses, I think one of the good starting points to kind of understand where your positioning is within the market and like who you want to serve as a customer, a good starting point is ChatGPT to kind of look into some of these things, at least to just understand where your realm is. But that also leads to a very important point about personal data and security, which I've found a lot happening all around now. Your ChatGPT sources that you're using, whether it's ChatGPT or Pilot, any AI assistive details that you're using, even the voice assistant ones, they will take all of your information as open source. Meaning that if you're uploading any of your customer and client information in there for any assessments or anything, you would immediately be breaching all these guidelines and regulations. So in a way, if you're also seeking this information out, just be very careful about where you're putting it as it's being assessed, which is also a testament to what David's saying here about getting professional services for these, because that's where you make sure that all of these protections are being held in place if you don't have them. So this is more of a notice for the people that are just trying to find their way into the industry or find what's best for them to explore. Just be careful with that detail in terms of how some of these AI assistive tools are being used. But just like David said, there's a lot of guidelines that will help you get there, just depending on where and what you're trying to serve and what products you're even serving at that level.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
thank you.
so Marwan, to that precisely, you could use AI. You could. It's just don't throw in client names. Don't throw in values. They'll protect the client instead of calling it. We're dealing with PepsiCo or Dole or whatever. We're dealing with client.
Mhm.
Invent a name, but you don't freely hand over data to entities that shouldn't be having it. Um, and you could further use AI internally with some installed systems. But I mean, there's free resources out there. Might as well use them, but use them wisely.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for that feedback there. So let's maybe move on to the next question. So we have another anonymous question here. How do we protect against security breaches associated with employees circulating or taking out, I believe it's out, taking out critical data within the organization?
Yes, that's a good one. So DLP is the acronym, and let's not hide from the fact that cybersecurity is riddled with acronyms. We are here to demystify that if need be. DLP is data loss protection. There are multiple tools out there. Microsoft offers something called Purview, and it's something that you could configure with probably the licenses you have right now. There are other tools that go even deeper to figure out exactly what employees are doing on a day-to-day basis with their time. But specifically towards data, what Purview does and what all these data loss protections do. The value add here is to basically automatically tag your documents that you have internally as public, sensitive, and confidential. You could choose those tagging systems accordingly. And then you would need to, what the system does and how the way you configure it is, can that that type of tag document, can it leave the organization? Who has access to this type of tag? Who could interact with the tag? And can it be sent out? There's multiple ways to govern. It's about really mentioning and identifying your crown jewels, what's important, what cannot be shared, and then protecting them accordingly. And then from there, from a hardware perspective, there was the USB example. You could block USB altogether, making sure there's no data that's being taken out, or we could have a stop loss, in a sense, if there is over 20 gigs, there's a terabyte of data that starts coming out of a business laptop at any point in time. Somebody gets an alert, the process gets stopped right away. So it's about identifying all these parameters and putting the right systems in place. 9 times out of 10, you actually probably have the tools to do so in your environment in terms of data loss protection. Of course, if you want to go deeper and you're really worried and you really want top-notch security, you could upgrade your Microsoft licenses even more, and it goes pretty deep down into detail. But data loss protection is very much worth considering. And number two, get the right policies in place about data usage, acceptable usage of laptops. So that's an artifact of source that you need. You get your employees to sign that because that's your legal recourse if they do anything that they're not supposed to.
Duly noted. Thank you for that. And I think in some other ways too, because I just want to make sure that we explore this case for all of our different industries. For some of the smaller corporations that maybe just be using some of their QuickBooks on their computer, right? Not a lot of terabytes of data, but some sensitive customer information. Maybe they're giving it to a courier or someone else internal of the sorts. There could be some of the other venues that I was just maybe thinking of, like when we're talking about employees circulating or taking out critical data, is it better for some companies like that in order to host their information with some cloud subsidiaries that do more of those control, prevention, permission, access, tracking, transaction logging? Like, is that a better option rather than locking down everything physical within, let's say, like a smaller office environment? Because I do know that the costs vary immensely between some of these solutions that I also want to make aware for some of our industry participants on the call today. So what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that, and what's kind of your survey of that across the current industry for cybersecurity?
So there is massive value today to get out of on-prem. So having a server under lock and key, if you could afford to do so, going to cloud is a massive advantage and lets you be on a distributed network that's way lighter to operate versus having anything sitting on site. So your QuickBooks, instead of having it just through a SaaS, you go on a browser, you access it through there, or you have it installed on a separate cloud system. If you have it on site, you have to maintain and update these servers, right? If they go down, if electricity stops working, going towards it, well, you're at the mercy of your IT room and the IT staff. The recommendation for mine, and it's a case by case basis. The idea is, if you're going to install something, make sure it's a trusted source. Get the basic security features that are included. What type of ISO 27001 GDPR, NIST regulations are they doing right now? Those are questions to establish what's important for you, and make sure that you actually configure the security features. More importantly, for smaller businesses, the easiest thing to do to secure yourself is go get MFA, multi-factor authentication. We've all been on all kinds of social media apps where they ask you to authenticate yourself with another number that pops up on your phone. If you're going with a cloud-based system, make sure that you're using MFA. That's an absolute must across every single system that you have. it's a bare minimum today in 2025.
I would agree with that. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on. I know we're a bit over time here. We'll just take a bit of time to answer the rest of the questions, but feel free to leave if you'd like. We understand that everybody has their priorities, and we can certainly send that in the recording. But we've got 2 more questions here, so we'll just field them as quick as we can. So another question here that mentions, you mentioned cybersecurity standards. Are there any specific for food and beverage?
So for food and beverage, like we mentioned, GDPR is going to be important if you're dealing with Europe. Law 25 is going to be important as well. I actually had this in one of the slides. The ones that are particularly of value to you. Just going to jump to it real quick. As quick as this could
And
go.
as David's going through here, we will also share a copy of the slides for you so that you can refer to all of this wonderful detail. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So the FDA is one of them. Sorry, it's somewhere. Oh, here. So Health Canada, you deal with Health Canada in any way, shape, or form. If you have some medicinal products, important. The Food and Drug Act, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, so the CFIA. So they enforce food regulation across the board. The Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, so the AAFC, very important. Safe Food for Canadians regulation. So these are regulatory bodies in your industry. Now, what you want to do is make sure that you're going through these, and if you're dealing with any of them one-on-one, then you're obliged to work and be within their confines in terms of what they consider secure. So I would take the time to read, and this is another thing that you use AI for. It's wonderful. Simply ask, what do I have to do to be compliant in terms of cybersecurity for the Safe Food and Canadians regulation, the SFCR. You perform that research, see the check boxes, and typically, if you have more questions, you should definitely speak to one of the representatives of the regulator in question. They all have customer service departments, and they're all ready to answer to make sure you're compliant, obviously. That's in a nutshell. But look, if you do standard practice cybersecurity due diligence elements, what's going to take place is that you will cover most of the issues available. So yeah, the idea is give them a call, check online for these particular ones over here, the HCCFIA. Even if you work with the FDA in the US, worth considering.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And just for anybody that's just curious and doesn't know where to get started, one of the best practices that you could do, if your website is public, available, you have a privacy policy, you have some of these initial steps set up, at the very least, then what you could do is link your website directly to a chat AI and also request that it gives you an analysis of some of these things to your public website. And there's a lot of really interesting things with the IT world with chat agents and AI agents that I'm sure is giving a lot of sales and value to companies that do cybersecurity, because as you saw in some of those videos, AI is getting insane with some of these capabilities, and one of those ways is through having these exploits that are engaged with these AI agents that look into your website, look into the details that you have public to give you back information. So that's another way that you can also kind of go on the other side just to see what kind of breaches you have and then begin your search into some of those breaches or some of the notes that you might pick up from there. But again, be very careful with AI and the information that you submit in there. Most of the time, it's just like David said, don't trust anyone and anything. That's the best way that you can go into these things, and make sure that you have all the mechanisms in place to catch those instances. And that's probably one of the better ways that you could start as well. I don't know if you'd like to add anything to that, David. But,
yeah, again, lots of acronyms, lots of processes. It seems mystifying, But the idea here is to make sure that you speak to someone. We have a team, we can talk together. If it's somebody else, speak to them. A chief information security officer cost upwards of $250,000 Canadian, if not more. You don't need to spare that burden on your own. Cybersecurity does not need to be expensive, but it should be related to your revenue. It's a certain percentage of what you're making should be dedicated to upgrading your IT on a regular basis, making sure you're secure, you have yourself a budget, and what's the most you could do with the budget that you have at hand.
Yeah, that's great insight. I think that's very important as well. So, okay, we have final question here. So we have our question here from Lucky Dechua. Thank you, Lucky, for submitting this. So it says here, to prevent a cyber attack, where is better to keep the data? Cloud or local server?
Both.
Great.
Both, absolutely both. So the idea here is keep your operational space where you want your data to be processed, of course. You'll have some systems going on that you want to be working with. You could keep them on those SaaS products, so software as a service, your online systems. But if it's critical data that you absolutely need, you need to be backing that data up. If you don't have a backup system or disaster recovery system in place, you're leaving yourself very vulnerable and very at risk if these systems get lost. And not even for a cyber hack of sorts. If somebody just clicks delete and there's no way to recover it or makes an edit, you need both. And what we say is the 3-2-1 rule. Have 3 backup mediums. So you'll have what you're processing, the operational space for your data. Then you need 3 mediums of backup, so different places. You want to have 2 different providers, different sources, and finally you want to have at least 1 offsite backup. If you do all that, yeah, you want to keep secure with different systems in place. But if you have the backup, well, you're mitigating anything that our dear hacker friends will try to do to you.
Completely agree. And just as a further point, when we're talking about both, we're not talking about the notepad or physical notes on your computer. Having a local server is very important to also have protected in many different ways. And I think I was reading this half knowing the answer because I think even from a personal standpoint, this should be a point that's mentioned is that you should also protect your own passwords, your own credit card information, and all of this stuff with the password protector. That would suffice for the cloud. Something locally, maybe on a protected hard drive that is encrypted and password protected with like encryptions. There's a lot of methods that you could do this, and the same should apply to your businesses and how you operate it with how you apply those. But in terms of how people can access some of these, because I know it could be like a lot for people to set up, like local infrastructure. What are some of your tips there and how people can get started or some things to avoid when they're considering some of those things?
In terms of setting up the first bits of cybersecurity,
Yeah.
I would, as we mentioned before, there's have endpoint security. Absolutely, if it's not there, you need it. So it's a more advanced version of an antivirus. If you're running a full-on business, everything's moving, you have employees, you've graduated from antivirus. You're now at endpoint detection response. That would be the first start. If you have questions, you're not sure of anything, speak to a cybersecurity specialist. One of our guys on your team will guide you. Get a vulnerability assessment done. You don't have to do this alone. I bet a lot of you on this call don't do your own taxes. You have an accountant. I don't do my taxes. I hate doing my taxes. It's awful. But there's specialists out there that do that. Find somebody who could help you. Armor would be one option. There are many out there. We like to be very fair with our pricing to the SMBs as well, and we have the experience. But do yourself a favor and find somebody. It does not have to be us. So 2 things, and then you get your vulnerability assessment done. or your cyber maturity assessment done to give you at least a roadmap of what needs to be done first based on your type of business, based on your needs.
Okay, terrific. That's awesome. And I think this might be, this is actually a curious question here. And thank you for submitting this. It's anonymous, but it says, from a legal point of view, is it possible to report attacks even when they fail? If so, to whom should they be reported?
The problem with attacks is, especially if it's low profile and it hasn't gone through. Um, so you have regulatory bodies. I know for Law 25, we're speaking out of Montreal, you have in French, la Commission des droits de la personne, or so basically information. There's a board that deals with information security. I could provide you with a name. And in Canada as well, if there's a breach, you're kind of legally obligated to tell them if it's significant. If it doesn't take place, you're supposed to log any type of breach and get lessons learned from that potential attempt. But in terms of authorities, say we spoke about the JBL, sorry, uh, yeah, so the Dole examples, all these big, high profile ones, because they're so huge, because it's like multi-million dollar deals, not only the media is doing something about it, but in the North American case with $11 million, you have the FBI getting involved because this is extremely serious. But the police, in a lot of circumstances, they're not going to be of very much help when it comes to lower profile cases. That's why you need to advise the commission, but also protect yourself first. Be on the defense instead of on the proactive defense instead of reactive panic afterwards. The investment up front will bring you dividends in peace of mind and being able to sleep at night. Remember, it's 2025, not 1985, where like the internet is absolutely on everything. It's in our pockets. And to the point that you made, Marwan, previously, protect your own stuff. Yes, absolutely. Your own passwords. It's actually a common source of mega breaches. They start off, if you use your business, your corporate email, and password, same password, if you reuse it for to order a pizza from a suspicious website on the internet, well, and there's not much security on that website, you don't know. And then there's a SQL database breach where it's now available on the dark web to absolutely everyone. Well, you just delivered your work credentials on that sketchy pizza uh, parlor website. So have different accounts, keep business and pleasure separate, protect both ends, don't reuse passwords, make sure they're long and complex. And yeah, those are some basics that you should be aware of.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. That's all the questions we have for today.
Sure.
And I think that brings us towards the end. So I want to first thank David for his time. Thank you so much for taking the time to present all of these wonderful and gorgeous insights for cybersecurity. And then second, I want to thank all of the participants that stayed on past the hours here. And I'd like to thank everybody that's joining us online and after the session ends. So again, thank you all. And as mentioned, this call is recorded, be shown online, and we'll follow up with the details of the presentation, any other subsequent resources from David back to you guys, hopefully by no later than early next week. And yeah, thank you guys again. Just like to throw it off to Tracy if there's any final remarks we'd like to note.
Just like to say thank you, David, for a very interesting and insightful presentation. A little scary, but a lot of things that we need to start thinking of or have thoughts about to protect ourselves, because we've all got or heard the horror stories of people that have been hacked or fallen for phishing scams or anything, personal or business wise. We will be sending, like Marwan says, the link to the webinar recording on our FPSC YouTube channel shortly, as well as a copy of the presentation. Please join us in June for our next Speaking Food webinar, and I thank you all for participating today. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.